your colleagues for being such an inspiration, because at least for me, I have to say, looking on the screen and seeing Yelena and Rabab and Athena, and, you're all inspiration for me, and I'm sure for the other younger generation as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Goes both ways.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm enjoying the conversation very much. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Nice
and everyone
meeting
keep
you.
safe and healthy.
Yeah. Be happy.
We're moving on with our second plenary talk, which I think will be very inspiring. So our second plenary speaker is Donald Williamson. Donald is an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science at Indiana University, where he is a director of the Audio, Speech, and Information Retrieval, or ASPIRE, research group. He's also a member of the Data Science and Cognitive Science programs. Donald received his Ph.D. in Computer Science and Engineering from Ohio State University, his Master's in Electrical Engineering from Drexel University, and his undergraduate degree from University of Delaware. Before starting his PhD, he was member of the engineering staff at Lockheed Martin. Donald's research interests are in the intersection of speech, human-computer interaction, machine learning, and signal processing. In particular, in his work, Donald addresses ways that enable computers to process, understand, and respond to sound information. Donald is recipient of the prestigious NSF Career Award and the Toyota Research Institute Award. Today in his talk, he will tell us about his path to a career in academia. Donald.
Thank you, Dr. Pachapaloo, for that introduction. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And just want to make sure everyone can see it correctly. So thank you for that introduction, Dr. Pachapaloo, and good morning or afternoon, evening to those all around the world that are here, participating in this workshop, and promoting diversity and signal processing or progress. It's really a pleasure to be a part of this and participate in this. I've been, listening and watching the talk earlier and the panel, and this is really a lot of good information. So, I'm hoping the students are all, taking notes and leverage this information, because if I think back on it, several years ago, I definitely wish I would have had this sort of workshop for me when I was a student. So make sure you're leveraging this as much as you can. And thanks for the invite again. Thanks for all the organizers for putting this together. So the title of my talk is The Whining Path to a Career in Academia. And it probably could have been called differently. It probably should be more specific, or a winding path or my winding path. Because as you can see from the discussions earlier, that everyone's path may be different, some may be winding, but they may do it in a different way. So really the goal of this talk for me is really to encourage everyone who may have experienced things the way I have in terms of how to reach your goals, and really just to encourage you to still pursue careers in academia despite some of the sort of internal and external challenges that you may face. So with that being said, let's get started. So really in academia, I attended a few workshops, once I became a graduate student, about sort of the path to a career in faculty or academia. They talk about, where you start, right? You start at some undergraduate program. When you're an undergraduate student, you may do some research with a faculty member in a specific area based on maybe some course you took that you enjoyed. So you reach out to that faculty member, you start doing research in that area. And, right off the bat, you really like that research area. You fall in love with it, you pursue it. You may have some success, being a part of maybe publications or some sort of patent or something that, it's positive experience that puts you in the right direction. And then you go on to get your bachelor's degree, with the concentration in that area. You immediately know at that point, that you want to continue on with your, education, that you want to be in academia. So, you apply to some Ph.D. program and you're accepted into a program. Within that, maybe a subfield within the area where you started, as an undergraduate student. You know, you hit the ground running, so to speak, and you have immediate success. And you sort of, you know, get some publications, maybe get to go to some conferences. So you're really establishing your research acumen. And, you know, you're further sort of exploring your interests and further defining your interest at the same time. You know, then finally, you sort of earn your PhD in that area. You hit the job market, you apply for academic positions. Maybe you get a postdoc. But eventually, you know, after you get your PhD, sooner enough, you start your academic career. And when I say academic career, I'm really talking about and you know, a tenure track, you know, sort of faculty position. You know, I guess that's defined in the U.S., which is, you know, I'm most familiar with. So essentially, like what I'm describing here is sort of a straight path from where early on you sort of identify your area of interest and you sort of pursue that area of interest throughout your career. And, you know, once you start working as a full-time faculty member. So for some people, and I've known some of these people, you know, that I met as undergrads, you know, this was their path, and it was straight, it was clearly defined, and this is great. If this is you, this is good to see. It's good to see, you know, to have sort of this level of knowledge about your experience and what you want to do. So this is great, but for some, though, this may not be your path. And for me, this was not my path. My path was not straight at all. It was far from it, in fact. And so I had a lot of uncertainty as far as what I wanted to do, as far as my goals, as far as my interest. I've always battled between industry and academia, at least pretty early in my career, as far as which direction to take. I battled between sort of fields within academia, as far as engineering and computer science, and you know, I've always toggled with sort of which way to go with my career. So really, so you can look at sort of this map. This sort of shows sort of where I've been and where I started. So, and I sort of started, you know, undergraduate research experience, you know, at University of Delaware. Got some industry experience as an intern. Got some, you know, a couple in industry experience as an intern from there. Went to graduate school, got more graduate research experience, went to industry full time. Then, you know, back to academia as a graduate student again, back to industry as an intern, then, you know, back to finally where I am now as an academic. And so my path definitely wasn't straight. It definitely was winding, going back and forth between, you know, industry, academia, and the different sort of, you know, options, career options that you may have and decisions you may have. But really, I want to say from this point that this is also fine. I know I'm really, in this case, I want to speak to students that may be uncertain about their career, may be uncertain about certain things. And I want you to know that it is fine to have uncertainty and not have, you know, everything sort of mapped out from the beginning, you know, from now to, you know, 30, 40 years from now, when you, you know, hopefully be able to retire from your positions. So really, I want to speak to students from that regard. So really, the goals of my talk today is really to discuss, you know, weighing some of these different career options, more or less from my perspective, my experiences that I went through. And sort of show how these options can really help you out and help you achieve a career in academia as a sort of, you know, tenure track assistant professor or the equivalent wherever you are in the world. So I just want to discuss those things. So sort of the outline for my talk here, in this case this morning, is to really discuss where am I at now. So introduce you to what I do now, my research, my current work. Then briefly talk about why am I here, sort of why did I choose a sort of career in academia over other options. And then I want to talk about, you know, my journey here. How did I get to this point? What are some of the key takeaways and hopefully some advice that I can, you know, provide to you that really was helpful to me, and looking back on, I think it can be helpful to you as well. Then I'll also go into sort of my job search process briefly, and then also get into some final suggestions, and then open it up for questions to all of you. So right now, as Dr. Pachaklou said, and when she introduced me, is that I am a assistant professor at Indiana University. So this is in Midwest United States, about 4 hours or so south of Chicago, so if you need a point of reference. So I've been here for 5 years. I'm currently, if you're aware of the sort of the US sort of academic system, this is my 5th year. I go up for tenure and promotion this current year. So I'm actually, that's my tenure application is being evaluated as we speak in the initial process. So, so right now here, I direct the Aspire Research Group, which is the audio, speech, and information retrieval research group. I like acronyms. I worked in industry for some time, and they're big on acronyms, so I sort of said that as well. But I also like the name that actually means something, because part of my goal is to aspire students and to aspire individuals from underrepresented groups like myself and women to really pursue careers in this field, because I think it's, or this area, because I think it's really, really a great field to be in. So my work, though, my research that I lead and I direct with my students is more about really taking signals, taking data, extracting information from that, and being able to sort of either make predictions from that, enhance the data in some sort of way, help with decision making for some operator, but in generally to really help human-computer interaction. So if I did like a pie chart of my work, sort of, you sort of can see this here. More or less half of it is in the area of speech, either enhancement or assessment. And I'll talk briefly about these in the coming slides. And this work is sort of foundational based on what I did as a PhD student, but really also it builds off some of the things I learned as when I did my first graduate experience at Drexel University, where I did take some of Dr. Petropoulos's courses as well, which were very influential to me to then. But in addition to speech, I do some other work as well with human behavior, with medicine and precision health, with privacy and the works within sort of the speech signal processing domain. My work is very interdisciplinary. It involves a lot of different fields, from machine learning, signal processing, sort of psychoacoustics in terms of how we process sound information, and perceive sound information and produce sound information or speech. My work deals with human behavioral studies, acoustics, robotics, all those sort of things. And it's been funded by different agencies as well, both local here at IU and sort of national or international ones as well. So this is what I do now. Most of my research and sort of the bulk of my work that my students and I work on is in, what I call speech enhancement or sound source separation. And sort of the basic idea of this is that I want to be able to, given an audio signal, I want to be able to separate the different sounds that are within that audio signal. So for instance, I'm going to play a sound here and I hope you can hear it. Breaking it down, almost. Can everyone hear this? Let me play it one more time.
Yes.
Now, if you're in the field, you may have heard this before, but I'm assuming some of the students may have not. So if you can tell me what you heard, type it in the chat, and I'll be curious. If you didn't hear it, you can, break it down. Can anyone recognize what it said there? And if you can, you can type it in the chat. I can see the chat feature. The dinner is almost, I think Sarah says, breaking it into something, Story says. So play it one last time. Breaking it down, almost. I think, sorry, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. I think you're close. And if I play this this is sort of the noisy version of that. So this is sort of indicates sort of what we would hear in sort of some restaurant environment, pre or post COVID, where, it's crowded, a lot of people are talking, there's other sounds going on. Maybe you're trying to have a conversation with someone. You may hear this sort of sound in there, and you may struggle to recognize what they're saying. So part of my work is to do sort of sound source separation or speech enhancement, where we want to either, separate the sounds into their respective sources or separate them, more or less just to remove unwanted noise. So in the ideal sense, if I had a sort of perfect system, this is what you would hear for the speech.
A break in the dam almost caused a flood.
So a break in the dam almost caused a flood. This is, a classic from a common database. I think someone said breaking as well. So you hear part of that. But you don't hear all of it because the noise really, obscures the speech, and you really can't recognize what is being said. So a lot of my work is in more or less developing different sound source separation systems that can effectively separate the speech from the noise. So, and you can see that this potentially is important for those, and mostly important for those that wear hearing aids. Someone with a hearing aid, they really struggle to communicate in noisy environments. They struggle essentially to separate different sound sources, and it's very difficult for them to do that. And part of my work, and obviously, hopefully, be put into hearing aids or use of hearing aids, so that people can hear better and function better. And this is important because several organizations sort of estimate that the number of those with hearing impairment or some level of hearing loss is really going to be extremely high over the next 20 or 30 years for different reasons. So a big part of my work now is addressing this problem, and I have several students that do that. Sort of another sort of big branch of my work is related, and this is from my pie chart, is about assessment as well. If I'm going to separate different signals out, and I want to try to do that, how do I know if I'm performing well, and sort of what measures should I use to tell performance or assess performance? Well, ultimately, I feel that you or I, people, we are the ultimate sort of assessors in performance in terms of how well speech is separated, in terms of what is quality. How good is its quality? Is it sort of natural sounding? Does it contain noise or distortion? Is it sort of intelligible, and I can recognize what's being said? So you or I, people, we are the ultimate sort of way to assess speech. But by and large, the way we can get people to assess speech or how we assess our algorithms often removes people from the process, or they're not included till really late in the process. So part of my work is in developing sort of speech assessment or perception models using sort of machine learning that really can mimic how a person would rate the quality of an audio signal. So you can imagine there's a 10-point scale. I have, people rated 10 if it's the quality is extremely good, 0 maybe if it's, or 1 if it's the quality is really bad or poor. And then if I have multiple people rate the quality of a signal, I can generate sort of a mean opinion score. So this was work that was funded by NSF and was given a mean. I collected sort of, hundreds of thousands of data from different users using crowdsourced means, average the results to give a mean opinion score. And then ultimately, my students and I developed sort of prediction models to sort of predict what's the mean opinion score for a given signal. And we sort of went through sort of different ways to evaluate it. But ultimately, our goal is to ensure that we're sort of correlated. Whatever we estimate as the mean opinion score is correlated with sort of the true mean opinion score that was provided by users. And this is sort of more recent work that I've been working on since I became a faculty member here at IU. And sort of lastly, the last sort of branch of my work is in audio privacy. And this is also work that I started since I've been a faculty member here at IU. And really the motivation for this is that, many of us have sort of always on devices where the microphones are always on. In my home office right now, I have like 3 around me: my cell phone, I have a Google Home Assistant, my laptop. But essentially, the microphone is always on, like for things like Siri or Amazon Alexa and those sort of devices. The microphone's always on, so you can it can sort of respond to a command that you give it. But this creates, if the microphone's always on, this creates sort of a privacy issue because, how can you trust that the microphone is not capturing sort of sensitive conversations that you may be having that you don't want to be exposed? How can you trust that the microphone is not inadvertently turned on, so to speak, so we can record your voice and maybe upload it to the cloud or send it somewhere else? Or, how can you ensure that sort of that your device hasn't been taken over, or there's not malware on it? And this is extremely challenging for speech and audio because unlike vision, we really just can't put something on our microphone to sort of prevent it from picking up sound. Like a camera, you can cover it so you can't hear, so it can't see anything. But a microphone, even if you cover it, there's still some sound that can be picked up. So this is work that I'm currently pursuing that is interesting to me, that I've really started to work on here since I've been at IU. So this more or less is my background. I want to just express that to you as a way of really conveying the message that now, though, that I'm here as a faculty member, I feel like my goals, my vision, my direction, my path is straight. But I wasn't always that way. And for part of the reasons why I'm here is that I really enjoy the ability to work on a lot of different projects and different problems that are of interest to me. So in this sort of picture here, if you can see, I have a picture of our building here at IU Luddy. This is actually, I think this is my office here. I haven't really been there much over the last year. But this is a picture of Luddy, and I'm here for the main reason is that I have academic freedom here. I have research freedom here, and I can work on problems that directly interest me. So those three branches of problems that I mentioned, these are problems that are of interest to me, not of anyone else. But my experiences and this many experiences I had helped me really find these sort of come to these conclusions of what my interests are. So I'm here for that reason, so I can work on problems I'm interested in. I'm also here in academia because I really enjoy multitasking. And I think part of multitasking, once you get an academic position, especially in the US, there's sort of three pillars that you're evaluated on as a tenure track faculty member. That's your research, which we all do as graduate students, or you will all do if you're undergrad and become a graduate student. You will do research, so that part is pretty straightforward. You have to conduct your own research. You have to establish your own group or lab, publish papers. Get grant money from external agencies, and that part is, I think, is straightforward. But I think unlike sort of industry or other fields, that research is not your only work. You do other things. You teach classes, sometimes multiple classes, depending on your level or the type of school you go to. But you also do a lot of service, and you do service for your school within your department at your school level. You do service for your research community, being part of conferences and planning conferences and those sort of things. But you also do service sort of outreach to the community, maybe, inspiring young, underrepresented women and minorities to pursue, careers in STEM and signal processing and machine learning. Those are all sort of things you do. And part of why I'm here is because I really enjoy doing all three of those things. And I definitely did not want a day where I'm just doing one only. I just don't want to do research. I just don't want to do teaching or just purely service. I want to have a career where I can do all of those. And that's part of my career. And sort of my plug is that a career in academia allows you to do that. It allows you to do all those three things. So it allows me to research those areas that I am most interested in, and I can guide them and as I see fit, which is a level of independence that you really don't get anywhere else unless you're sort of entrepreneur and you have a startup business or something like that. So I definitely enjoy this academic lifestyle, enjoy this freedom. And it's definitely a lot of perks to it that we can speak to and I can answer questions about sort of later on. So this is where I am now. I am here. I am a faculty position, but I wasn't always at this point where I knew this is what I wanted to do, and this is where I wanted to be. So really going forward, I want to sort of explain how I got here and how my different experiences really shaped my path and helped me sort of really figure out what I wanted to do. So how did I get here? So I started my undergraduate education at the University of Delaware. I majored in electrical engineering. I chose to major in electrical engineering largely because, I was told that's a good career to have. I think like Dr. Elena said earlier in her talk, I enjoyed math and science. I was told that electrical engineers should do a lot of math and science. I remember being young and we're talking about, I think dads came up a lot earlier. My dad was helpful for me as well. I like video games. I like playing those, and I would ask him, who makes video games? And he said engineers, electrical engineers. So my dad had a background in math and physics, so that was definitely helpful to me in terms of being exposed to some of the field. So for me, right away, I knew that he planted in my head at a young age, maybe 10 or so years old, that electrical engineers do these cool things, and that's sort of what I want to do. And so I think it's part of the theme I think I've heard from the panels and the conversation is that it's definitely important to sort of plant these seeds into young people, even well before high school, or they're in 11th or 12th grade, just to sort of they're aware of these interests. And I have daughters. I encourage them and to get into this field of the code and program. I know that my dad encouraged me, so I just want to pay it forward and do the same thing. So I went to University of Delaware, majored in electrical engineering. I was, because of the math and science mostly, and I started off, I enjoyed the classes. They were challenging, they were interesting. They were different, obviously, from what I experienced as a K through 12 student. But they definitely, I enjoyed the challenge that they presented to me. So luckily, I did perform reasonably well in my first 2 years, and I was given an opportunity to do undergraduate research with a faculty member there. I had taken this course in signal processing, the first sort of intro course to signal processing. We had to take 2 or 3 as an undergrad student, and I just really enjoyed the class. I enjoyed the math of it. I enjoyed sort of the applications of it as well, in terms of the impacts it can have on society. So I initially started doing undergraduate research with this faculty member, and so the first thing I had to do as an undergraduate researcher, my first task, and this is a project he gave to me, was really to work on developing algorithms that produce tactile images. And what is that? A tactile image essentially is like a Braille-like image that you can sort of feel the image. So it's sort of 3-dimensional. So mostly this is for someone with a visual impairment. They can't really see the image, but if you can print the image out and they can feel it, they can get an understanding of what the image conveys, what is in the image. And part of the challenge with this research is that one, you just can't print the image in Braille or print a tactile image as it is in general, because images have, in some cases, too much detail, where it would be too confusing for someone if they sort of felt the image to recognize what it is. So some information needs to be removed or lessened, but also sometimes the information needs to be enhanced in some case, like edges. So like if you have a picture of a face, right, you want to sort of enhance sort of the sort of jawbone area or eye socket area, those sort of edges, so that if it's printed as a tactile image, someone can feel it and recognize what it is. So this is my first exposure to research as an undergraduate student, and I got a lot out of this experience. And I thought it was a good way to expose me to research and sort of enhance what I learned in class. So my secondary sort of research experience was really later on when I became a senior, and this was about developing sort of an intelligent robot. And this is sort of this is actually an actual picture of that robot that my partners and I created. This is many years ago, so it's maybe primitive now, but so we had these ultrasonic sensors you can sort of see up top. We had some laser sensors on the side, and our goal was sort of to give this sort of intelligence. I put it in quotes. It wasn't anywhere near intelligent at the time, but to give us sort of intelligence to sort of navigate an obstacle course, so it wouldn't run into walls or run into any obstacles. And this again was definitely a good experience, and exposed me again and gave me more ability to learn what was in the class and enhance that. So really some of the pros from this experience are twofold. One is that I from the first experience with tactile images, I learned that I like to do research and help others. That was the important part to me. I just didn't want to do work where I did work necessarily to make money or to be just considered like a genius Bill Gates type, just run this big company. I really wanted to do work to really help other people out and help them improve their life. And I think part of that comes from my background. My parents They've always encouraged us, my siblings and I, just to really be helpful to others, not to just think about ourselves, and to really give back as much as we can. So part of this was very good for me because I learned that this is what I like to do, and that this is what I want to do. I want to do research. If I do research or engineering, I want to do work that helps others. And also had an interest in intelligence for my latter one. I realized I like the intelligence aspect of research and being able to mimic our brain and develop sort of systems that can really learn and grow. And also, I think another plus of this was the academic lifestyle. This is a summer experience, summer research. You come in sort of when you want, you leave when you want. At least that's how my advisor led his group. As long as you were sort of meeting deadlines, as long as you were available at the planned meetings and either group or individual, he didn't have a sort of, he wasn't rigid in terms of the environment. So this was very good to me. I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed the freedom of really exploring different ways and sort of taking a project how I saw it. But one of the cons of this at the time for me was that I kind of thought research was boring. At the time, I thought it was very monotonous, and you're kind of doing the same thing over and over. And I think that was a true feeling at the time. But when I sort of look back and think about it, I really think that I just need to be a little bit more patient. And this is sort of hopefully encouraging to you, is that you may be doing research, you may be working, you may not like it as much as you think. You may think it's slow, not fast enough. But I really encourage you just to be patient with work. And I say that just because whenever you're learning a new subject, whether it's research related or class related, it really takes some time to learn that subject. And many times, if you're doing a summer internship, it takes more than sort of 3 months. So sometimes, the period where you're learning can be slow. But I guarantee, and I can say from all my experiences, once you get beyond that period of sort of learning the field, I think it does speed up and does get a little bit better. You really can make sort of contributions and really sort of have success and formulate ideas. But for me, though, at this point, I have this is into my sophomore year. I had this summer experience as a researcher doing this tactile images and doing this algorithm development. But I kind of wasn't sure if research was my direction to go, because at that time, like I said, I thought research was boring. So as an undergraduate, I wanted to get experience in industry. So during my next summer, I got an internship experience. Again, from my first experience, I realized that I wanted to do work helping others. So I got an internship experience at this company called Dave Barron, which has since been bought many years ago by another larger company. And part of my role there was really to test medical equipment. So this is sort of a depiction of it. It kind of looked like this. This was many years ago. I couldn't find the exact picture of the device. So medical equipment like this, where essentially you would give it human samples, blood samples or other samples. And they had these samples would be in this sort of container. And he had these fiber optic cables that would sort of shine some light through the sample. And it had a sensor on the underside where you can sort of, the sensor would, read, capture the light that either was reflected or passed through. And based on sort of what the sensor gathers, it would, I guess, tell how healthy the patient is from that. So this is work that is used to help others, because that became a theme of mine. I wanted to do work that really impacted others. And part of my job was ensuring that these fiber optic cables sort of worked correctly. So I'm testing this. This is my job every day. I have all these cables. I'm testing them, running them. I had to, maybe the sensor's not working, so I had to tweak a little bit, and adjust the cables in some way. And then if something was an issue that I couldn't address, I would give it to my superiors, and and they would help me out with addressing that issue. So really a pro for me for this, and what I really liked about this was that I enjoy working in a team. I enjoyed sort of getting hands-on experience with engineering and sort of learning, enhancing some of the concepts that I talked about in class, like with sensors and circuits and those sort of things, and fiber optics. So that was really, really good. But I think a con for this, again, for me, was that it was not an academic lifestyle. It wasn't, I didn't have the ability to really explore and really to learn all the different components of this piece of equipment. I didn't have the ability to really put in my own ideas. I was given tasks that I just had to complete. And really, things like my work schedule was defined, 8 to 5. take a lunch at a certain time. And sometimes it was a lack of work. So I was kind of there just sitting on my desk, staring at the screen, not much work to do, but I couldn't leave because, you have to stay. That's just part of sort of work in industry, at least it was for me. So this was sort of a negative experience for me, I thought, in terms of the academic lifestyle. I did enjoy the other aspects of it, but in terms of academic lifestyle, it was a negative experience for me. So at this point, though, if I think about it, I had two types of experiences. I had both, one in research and in academia, one in industry. And sort of I had some takeaways from these that I got from this. And I think one thing I want to encourage you is, as you get to different experiences, is to try to take a positive out of every situation as much as you can. In research and academia, in class, take a positive out of every situation, because there could be something you learn from that, even if it's just learning what you don't like. I think that's an important part. I think some of the panelists earlier talked about finding your passion. And I think it's also equally important to find what you're not passionate in as well, because once you realize that, you can sort of remove that as an option in your career if you're certain of what to do. I really encourage you really to explore your interests. If you have a class that you like, reach out to a faculty member to try to get research experience in that area. If you're undergraduate, again, I'm speaking to undergrads and graduate students. If you're undergrad, try to get some industry experience. As a graduate student, try to get some industry experience as you can, because the sooner you're exposed to that, the sooner you can see what you like about it and what you don't. So really, get as many academic and industry experiences as you can. But for me at this point, though, if I'm thinking back at that time period when I was, finishing up my undergraduate degree, my senior year, at this point, though, I had these two experiences, both in academia and industry. At your senior year, you had to make a decision. Are you going to apply for a job, or are you going to pursue graduate school? And for me, I was uncertain. I really didn't know what to do at this point. I had two experiences. I had things I liked about them, things I didn't like about both. But I think for me, and I think part of this looking back could have been part of imposter syndrome, I didn't think I was ready to work. I didn't think I knew enough. I didn't think that I was prepared to work on these projects and really contribute. In spite of, doing well in class. I did well in class. I did, well in my research and those sort of things, but I just didn't feel certain about that and about work in industry. So for me, I wanted to learn more. I think I need to know more if I was going to contribute. So for me, this decision by default, just because probably imposter syndrome in some sort of way, I felt like I needed to sort of pursue graduate school just so I could learn more. So I ultimately, ended up going to Drexel University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I went there with the hope that as a Ph.D. student that I was going to develop, autonomous vehicles. As I said, I one of my sort of experiences as an undergrad was, creating these intelligent robots, or intelligent with quotes, and I wanted to pursue robotics and intelligence, going forward. So for me, I sort of made the switch though from electrical engineer to mechanical engineer. That's because the faculty member that did robotics at Drexel, he was a mechanical engineer, and I wanted to work in that area. So I made the switch to mechanical engineering. But it turns out though, as I started working on this project, I started working on this team, that this really wasn't the area for me for different reasons. I realized that my interest wasn't necessarily robotics per se. And this is, I think, looking back, this is where you had to do more homework about who your advisors are, who you're working with, and your experiences you take. But for me, I was more interested in intelligence, which is more of a signal processing, computer science field. And also I did butt heads with my advisor a little bit, which is also important. For undergrads here, and you're looking at graduate schools, it's good to find an advisor that you can work well with, and where you have similar and common interest. And same for graduate students. As you're starting off, if you're early in your career, it's important you find an advisor that you can work well with, because you will be there for a good amount of time. So I decided to switch. I was looking around at the time at other faculty members at Drexel, and there was a new faculty member there who was doing work in sort of music, and it was more about music intelligence. Is it about doing things like, if I'm given a music signal, can I sort of predict the genre of it. Is it a, you know, a rock and roll song? Is it a, you know, a classic song or country music song? He's doing work about, if you're given a song and you have purely the signal, can you sort of identify the artist? And can you do things like rate the similarity between songs? Like these two songs are similar to each other, you know, based on maybe the instruments and those sort of things. And this was, you know, I'm dating myself. This is back when, you know, iPods had just come out. And so, you know, you had these devices with, you know, millions of songs on them that you can listen to. So this was a very, you know, big field. And since he was doing work in intelligence, related to intelligence, I had an interest in intelligence, which I learned from my, you know, background experience. You know, I ultimately started to work with him on this, and you know, I enjoyed this. I learned a lot from this, and you know, the classes from there. And so, for part of my first graduate experience that I had, I really thing I enjoyed about this was that I learned that I really do enjoy artificial intelligence and signal processing. I enjoyed the courses I took there. I enjoyed sort of the intelligence aspect of the projects that I worked on. There too, I've also was a part of the group. He did a lot of outreach activities for K through 12 students and for teachers as well in the public school systems here or there. And I enjoyed doing those as well. So not just doing the research, but actually helping others. I really realized that as I enjoyed that as academic. But for me, the con of this was that I was at this point, you know, going through 6 years of school, getting a master's degree. I kind of was tired of school at this point. I wanted to get away from school, was tired of taking exams, tired of taking tests. And still at this point, even 6 years, you know, from starting my undergrad degree, I still wasn't certain, like, is this the area I want to research long term? I still have some uncertainty at this point. So I came to sort of the fork in the road moment where, you know, after getting my starting to get my master's degree, I had to decide, do I continue with my PhD and sort of work in this field or possibly switch fields, or do I stop here at my master's and sort of go to work in industry and sort of take a break, but also sort of take some time to think about what it is I want to do in life. And so for me, the choice was really at that point to really do the latter and take a break, stop my master's, go to work in industry. So I can take a break, but also so I can really self-reflect and sort of try to figure out what I want to do in life. So I did that. I started working at Lockheed Martin. This is a large defense contractor in the U.S. Do a lot of work with the U.S. Navy and the defense industry. I did things like system and software engineering, so like writing requirements for some of the developers and also coding myself. I was part of a program that we did rotations, so we got to experience different aspects of the company. These rotations were like 9 months long. I had rotations where either I'm developing ideas and working with customers, sort of like in a startup fashion. I had rotations where sort of, you know, modernizing old approaches, so they're newer, so using newer technology. And I had rotations where I'm just sort of testing the debugging sort of systems that are sort of in their final stages of and ready to go out to customer. So I worked on a lot of big and interesting and challenging projects, was really big with you know, sometimes thousands of people working on them, that it really can have an impact on the world. I love my experiences, work with the people. They're really, really helpful and accommodating. So my industry experience was great, but again, it comes back to something I experienced before. It still wasn't exactly what I wanted in life, this long term. I didn't see myself doing that for the next, you know, 30, 40 years of my career. Because one, like I said, working in industry is different, right? What you work on is sort of dictated to you, and at least in my experiences, it may be different from others. From my experience, what you work on is dictated to you. Your managers decide sort of what project you're working on. They decide sort of, you know, how long you get to work on that, in terms of like, you have certain deadlines, and once this deadline passes, you got to move on to a different aspect of that. And so you really don't have a lot of freedom to really pursue some of your own interests, at least, you know, during work time. You know, also the academic lifestyle is in terms of like when to work, how long to work, those things. It's more or less dictated to you in industry, at least it was for me. And I think a big part of my channel of industry was that I really just did one thing. I just did engineering. I didn't do part of my work life. I really wanted a multifaceted work schedule where I can do research, I can do engineering, but I can also do outreach and help others, which I had experience with from prior experiences. And I think another big thing, and this is sort of where for some of you to maybe deciding between a master's degree and a PhD, from my experience, there are limitations if you only have a master's degree in terms of the jobs that you can do. And the people who really made the decisions and really guided the direction of the projects, most of them have PhDs or they've been with the company for decades. So really the master's degree was, you were limited by that. And even today, talking to some of my students, here at IU that are considering, thinking about just a master's or a PhD, it is, I think it's still some of the same situations, even at companies like Microsoft and, Google and Facebook, especially if you're looking at their research positions, that some of them aren't really available to you without a PhD. So if you're interested in sort of research and guiding your own direction, you definitely, I think, have to go ahead and complete your PhD. So for me, though, since based on these things, I decided to go back to school. And this time I went to Ohio State University. So I switched schools, partly because, I did like intelligence, I did like signal processing, but I wanted to work on work that directly, positively impacts someone in terms of health. So for me, that was about more or less now, I found an advisor at Ohio State that does work doing speech processing for hearing impaired. So the whole idea is that they want to do things like I did describe earlier, doing speech enhancement, where we can sort of improve hearing aids so that people with have hearing loss can communicate effectively. So I went and started my PhD at Ohio State. I started working on developing algorithms for that. And I try to do this as most effective as I can. So this research, though, was related to my experiences. So it was research that helped others, which I did, as an undergraduate. It involved signal processing intelligence, which I did as a master's student. And sort of one of the big perks I really enjoyed about this was that, I can really enjoy the academic career. I can guide the research how I thought and how my advisor guided me in some capacity. And really it was just a great experience, being able to travel. And my first ICASSP was in 2013 in Canada, and being able to travel and present your work and to see what everyone else is doing, and which is what I had never done before. So this was, I didn't realize how interesting it is to be able to do this. So this, again, is another perk of the academic lifestyle. And at this point, going back to school, I knew at this point that I wanted to pursue an academic career. I wanted to guide my research, and I wanted to sort of follow the path to a sort of tenure track position in academia. So at this point, I'm towards the end of my academic career. I'm starting a job search process, and I had industry experience again as a graduate student, as a PhD student, and that's just to really see what research was like in industry. And it sort of, at that point, though, I kind of knew I wanted to do academic position. I just wanted to make sure. So I took an industry experience there as well. And then sort of to solidify, yes, I want to do research in academia, in academic setting, not in a sort of industrial setting. So towards my latter years as a PhD student, I started a job search process. So this was an exciting time to me because I finally realized what I want to do, my research area. I finally know which direction I want to go. And so this is really exciting time to me, but it is an exhausting or tiring time as well, because you're doing a lot of writing, you're doing a lot of self-reflection, you're doing a lot of applying to a lot of schools. I mean, I applied to dozens and dozens of places because I really just wanted to get my foot in the door. And so the academic job search, and I know there's some discussions on this, it may be slightly different from others because, right, a company like Google, Microsoft, you can just apply to a job there. Where for an academic job search in the US, right, oftentimes they're looking for certain fields, right? They're looking for someone that does circuits, they're looking for someone that does machine learning. Unless your sort of research is in that field, oftentimes you don't apply. So essentially what I'm saying is that you just can't, pick a random school and sort of apply to it. Right? They had to have an opening and availability. So you're often, doing a lot of searching to sort of find these opportunities and find these locations. And so it can be exhausting at times, but it's worth it for me because I really wanted to just get my foot in the door. I was really open to go anywhere. It didn't matter to me. So part of the process, though, I think, and sort of if I give some sort of suggestions, it does involve a lot of self-evaluation. You have to write statements. Especially in the US, you have to write research statements, teaching statements, you may have to write service statement or diversity statements. So you really, and you want to be, honest and stuff in your statement. So you really have to do some self-reflection to realize, okay, what is my research? What have I done? What is sort of the big picture? What do I want to go forward and do? Teaching wise, what is my teaching philosophy? How do I want my classroom structure to be? What classes, if I'm applying to a specific university, sort of what classes can I teach there, or what classes can I sort of introduce or develop there? And similar with service. So you really have to do some self-reflection to sort of identify some of these things. Luckily for me, at Ohio State University, they had some academic job search workshops there, and I would go like every year, literally, because like my second or third year, I knew I was going to get an academic position, so I would go to this workshop every year, just thinking, I know I may learn something new from this. So if you have those at your institution, I definitely encourage you to go to those. If you don't, definitely come to workshops like this in progress and get this information, because it is, the academic job search process is unique, it's different. So you want to get as much information as you can. And I think also, from as a sort of suggestion, is make sure you practice. You have to get job talks and doing your job search process, and make sure you're practicing. Practice all the things. Make sure you have people looking at your statements and sort of giving you helpful information. So essentially, now my current path, I think, is straight. I think it started off winding. It started off with uncertainty. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But all this experience, though, if I had to do it all again, I wouldn't change it. I think these experiences really helped me identify what I want to do, my goals, and now that I realized what I want to do through the experiences, is I know sort of where I want to go, and I have clear vision. So I really want to encourage all of you, if you have uncertainty, to don't give up on an academic career. Hopefully, it's a possibility for you, and just continue with that. And I think, I guess, a couple of things, and then I'll be able to open the questions. Since I am now in an academic position, only been here for 5 years, there are some challenges with it. Obviously, you have to multitask. You have to do research, teaching, and service. And as some of the panelists said earlier, you have to be able to balance between the three. You can't spend too much time on any one of them. You have to do a little bit of all of them. But if you're at an R1 school, as a research school, like here I am here, you have to make sure you're focused on your research, but still doing well in sort of your other things. I think another sort of piece of advice, if you're thinking about an academic career, sort of learning how to say no, is especially the junior faculty member, is really hard. There's a lot of things that pull you to do certain things that sort of take time, that sort of distract you, so to speak, from what you need to really focus on. So you really have to learn how to say no to more senior faculty members in your field, experts in your field, which is something I'm still learning to do. And then, as others said, make sure you're finding mentors and advocates, those that help you out. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Learn from others that have gone through it before you, and really leverage the sort of information that they can provide. So in summary, and again, this came up earlier, I really hope that you find your career and research interests. I think you can really find those just by gaining a lot of experiences. If you're not certain of them, get academic experience, get industry experience, learn what you like and don't like. No one can tell you what you to like or should like. It's your career. You should be the captain and guide it. So, and I think the best way to really figure out what you want to do is through experience and gaining as many as you can, as an undergraduate, as a graduate student as well. I think the path to success, and I think part of that is, it doesn't have to be straight. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can go back and forth, and I think that's fine. Just pursue whatever you want to do wholeheartedly, and don't get discouraged. And I think you can achieve your dreams if this is what you really wanted to do. So with that being said, I want to give time for questions. So just thank you all for listening, and now I'm sort of open for questions. And if you don't have any now, you think of some later, feel free to email me and reach out.
Thank you, Donald, for this very interesting talk. I'm sure most of the participants will relate with what you said, like the struggle between academia or industry and the winding path of your career. It's great to hear that you ended up in academia, where you can have a significant impact. Also, you mentioned that you were in my class at Drexel University. I hope I didn't give you a lot of trouble. But I just wanted to tell you that I'm always thrilled to come across students who used to be in my class, and particularly thrilled when I see them doing well. And this is one of the amazing things in academia. You get to have a small effect of people and their careers. And this is really unique about academia.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely, you had definitely a positive impact. I took 2 courses with you. I remember, like statistical signal processing, and I think another signal processing course. They're very helpful. I still leverage that information now for some of my work. So thank you.
Thank you. So any questions for Donald? Well, let me start with one question. Maybe you can get the discussion going. So you give very good advice. You said that you have to learn to say no. And based on my experience, diversity faculty are asked to do a lot of things, way more than regular faculty get to do, especially the assistant professors. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be this way. I mean, they should be given the time to develop their careers. So it's very important to learn to say no. How do you best do that without upsetting others, your more senior colleagues or your chair?
I think I had to learn this, and I said I don't think I did a good job to start, because I think it's part because you want to get to know your colleagues, you want to impress them, you want them to like you in some way. So, and you feel, especially as a junior faculty, remember that if I say no, how would that be perceived? Would they not like me? Also they're going to, their, tenure track, they're going to vote, and I want them to vote positively for me. So I think early on it was difficult, but I think now learning to say no, I think is always thinking about, is this sort of along my plan? So I think part of it is you have to have a plan. You have to have, I think Dr. Elder was saying earlier, like you need to plan sort of what you want to do the day, the month, the week, the year. You got to have a plan, and then you need to see, like, when you're maybe asked to collaborate on work, is this sort of part of my plan? Can this help me along my plan? And if it does, then yes, and it can be helpful for you. You should probably say yes to it. But if it really is sort of perpendicular or orthogonal to your plan, then maybe you want to say no, or say not at this time, gently, just because it's really going to take you away from what you want to do, whether it's grants or publications, and take time, because we all have 24 hours in a day, and if anything sort of keeps you from doing the things you need to do to be successful, then you probably should say no. And I think too, it is apart from diversity, you do get on these committees. I think part of the committees for diversity, and part of it, the challenge is you want to be on those committees, like you really do want to do them and help out, because I know that so many people have helped me out, diversity wise, and others, just to encourage me to pursue this, and you want to do it. So really, I think in terms of, you got to look at your schedule and plan it out and see, when, do you have the time to really dedicate to this? And if you do, yes, say yes. And if you don't, then you can say no, but, say maybe, in the future, in a few months, I could be able to help.
Yes, thank you. We have 1 more minute. Is there a question? I see a comment here. As a PhD student, sometimes I feel like there is no room for making mistakes. And you mentioned that it's important not being afraid of making mistakes. Any advices on how to reduce the fear?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think we all have a lot of fear. And I think, beyond, I think part of that is being an underrepresented person or woman. I think sometimes you have these fears of, I need to be perfect in order for people to really, value my work or what I do. So the fear is real. And I think I struggle with that as well. But I think looking back on it now, I think part of research is mistakes. Like we all have I think everyone has a lot of ideas, and they sound really good in your head. And then once you try them out, some work, some don't. I think majority of them don't work. More of them don't work than do. So don't be afraid to make mistakes, but also make sure you're doing your due diligence and sort of to try to minimize mistakes. Like make sure, like if you're given a presentation, that you're proofreading, your slides, proofreading, or anything you write, just try to minimize your mistakes. So make sure you're putting in the effort to minimize sort of obvious mistakes. But I think you just gotta, it's hard to do, but I think you have to accept that there are going to be some mistakes. It's human. We're all human. None of us are perfect. And just, I think about your successes, think about what you've done well, and don't sort of dwell on your mistakes. Just try to have a positive outlook, which again is easier said than done though.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Donald. It was a pleasure having you, and best of luck with your next career steps.
Thank you for the invite. I enjoyed it.